A brute force attack is a hacking method where attackers attempt to gain access to a system, account, or network by systematically trying all possible combinations of passwords or encryption keys until the correct one is found. This approach relies on sheer computing power and repetition to force entry, often targeting accounts with weak or common passwords. Brute force attacks can be time-consuming and resource-intensive, but they can succeed if security measures are inadequate, potentially exposing sensitive data or allowing unauthorized access to systems. To identify brute force attack: repeated failed login attempts. Check authentication logs for multiple failed login attempts in a short period. This often indicates an automated script trying different credentials. Unusual IP activity. Frequent login attempts from a single or multiple IPs trying to access your server in quick succession could indicate a distributed brute force attack. This is especially noticeable if the IPs originate from unusual locations or regions. High server resource usage. Brute force attacks can spike CPU and memory usage due to the high volume of requests. Monitoring your server's resource usage can help detect any abnormal load that might correlate with login attempts. Unfamiliar or unauthorized accounts. If you detect any unauthorized or unfamiliar accounts being created, this could indicate that a brute force attack was successful in gaining access to your system. Real-time intrusion detection systems. Tools like Fail2Ban and OSSEC can detect and alert you to potential brute force attacks by monitoring logs for specific patterns of failed logins and blocking offending IPs. How to prevent brute force attack? Enable any firewall. A firewall limits access to specific ports and restricts IPs with excessive failed connection attempts. By allowing only trusted IP addresses and setting rate limits on services like SSH, a firewall reduces the risk of unauthorized login attempts. Install and configure Fail2Ban. Fail2Ban protects servers from brute force by monitoring logs for repeated failed logins and blocking offending IPs automatically. Fail2Ban's automated response minimizes unauthorized access risk, maintaining server integrity with dynamic, rule-based security. This tool complements firewalls, providing an additional layer of automated defense against brute force attacks. Disable root login and use SSH key authentication. Disabling root login and using SSH key authentication significantly enhance server security against brute force attacks. Disabling root login prevents attackers from targeting the highest privilege account, reducing unauthorized access even during brute force attempts. SSH key authentication adds an extra layer of security because it requires a unique cryptographic key pair instead of a password, which is nearly impossible to guess or brute force. Change the default SSH port. Changing the default SSH port from 22 to a non-standard port helps protect against brute force attacks by hiding your server's entry point. Automated brute force attacks often target default ports, as attackers assume common configurations for efficiency. When SSH operates on a different port, attackers must first identify the port in use, which adds a significant obstacle. Enable two-factor authentication. Enabling two-factor authentication significantly strengthens defense against brute force attacks by requiring not only a password, but also a second form of verification, usually a one-time code generated on a personal device. This means that even if an attacker manages to guess or brute force the password, they would still need access to the second factor, which is typically unique and time-sensitive.